Yes, my family has to leave, so I just have one question, and unfortunately, it's going back to the snowplow thing. But right now, I understand that you're planning or have put warnings on cars that are not abiding by this regulation. Is that correct? Is that what you're planning to do?
The police department has done that on flyers. I don't know if anybody here has received them, but I know that they're doing that as a...
The police department is doing that now?
Mhm.
I just want to give you a very brief personal history. We moved here after living in the country outside of Chelsea for 24 years. We moved here 16 years ago, and within a few years' time, our home was broken into, our car was stolen with my purse in it, our vehicles were vandalized 3 times, and we live in a nice neighborhood. Now, if our police force is pared down, I would rather that they would be spending their time on the problems with crime and vigilant that than putting parking stickers on people's cars or warnings on people's cars that are parked in front of their own home. So I'll leave you with that parting thought. But I really want to thank both Laura and Pat for having this meeting. I admit I've been quite ignorant about the local politics and the city council, but I'm impressed with the work that you're doing and all the problems that you have to deal with, and I wouldn't want your job at all.
Sometimes I don't.
But I do pray
If
for
anybody's
you.
leaving, I've got my business card, and I've got my personal cell phone on it. You call me on the weekends anytime you wish. If anybody wants a card, I can give you one here.
Give it to Betsy.
Yeah, I'll call it.
Can I find my own little parking signs? I'll put it right there.
Before you scoot out, there is a service called Blackboard,
Yeah.
which is a citywide notification that you can sign up for, and it will let you know about storms, snowstorms. So whatever we work out in the snow plowing,
Okay.
you know, we can say, move your cars off the street because the snow's coming. Type of thing, but-
I would think
You'll
that
hear
most
more
of
about
us
that.
would have the common sense to do that, but if you provide that service, that's so.
It is
Thank
different.
you.
It's far more
Sorry for all the
comprehensive.
changes of the day.
It was nice
Thanks
meeting
for
you.
coming.
Have a good day.
Excuse me, your Blackboard, is that something that's going to be online on your particular website or something?
There'll be an icon online. You'll be able to click on it. It'll tell you how to sign up. You can put your email on it. You can choose what kind of messages you want to get. If it's just emergency messages, you can get those. If you want just Parks and Rec messages, if you're playing men's softball like I do and you just want to know when the games are canceled, you can do that. They'll text you, they'll email you, they'll call you with a computer-generated call or somebody's voice who pre-records a certain message.
We can remind landlords that their renewal of their
all of that
property
can-
registration
all that can be
is
sent.
coming up.
Or could be through the city
No,
or
we can do
your
it by
website?
cell phone,
City.
it can call your landline, it can
It'll
call
be up
your
about
cell
4
phone, it
weeks
can
on the
text
city's
you,
website.
or it can email you.
Hit the arrow.
Hit the arrow. My instructor, here. Jerry.
I've got these, a house next door to us was vacant, and a business owner in the city bought the house. And he moved his family in there, and I said something about renting, the city, and he goes, I don't even bother with the city because I'm renting it to my family. Well, I had the city in there because of a safety, I was worried about, because there were small kids and everything, and the house is not much bigger than this area right here. And they had 12 people living in there. They had people down in the basement, just a small
I
basement.
think I remember this.
And nothing's been backed up, and it's still, the situation hasn't changed. I mean, as a matter of fact, when the guy came over there, the woman, I know she speaks English, she said, told her son to come out there, I can't, she can't speak English, so he had to bring somebody back that could interpret. And when he did go through the house, he told them that they can't be back down there, living in the basement. They had to have an egress window and all this, and nothing's ever been followed up on that.
Is it owner occupied? Does the owner live there?
No, it's his family, it's his people that he brought up because he has restaurants around town, and he has his family living in his house, and they're working in his restaurant.
This is one of the reasons that we don't have a rental registry and a rental enforcement ordinance. We have a non-owner occupied. Because what's happened in a lot of cases, and this isn't the landlords who are in this to do a business, this are people who say, I have somebody living there, but they're doing other services, so they're bartering. This is an issue with the IRS too, by the way. imputed rent. So here, we're trying to say that, listen, if you've got a unit, and we have a lot of people who take trades and services. As a matter of fact, I know one in particular owns 3 different houses, gives away rent to somebody who's not related to them in exchange for some other service. So it's really a rental. There's no remuneration back and forth in cash or anything like that. It's some other service. So that's why it's a non-owner occupied ordinance, not a rental ordinance.
I want to say this for, I think of it all the time. I used to work for the county. We restored the Woolworths building, which is connected to the city building. New boilers, new elevators, everything in it. And I just could not imagine the city not picking that up and making that part of their, or lease it out, at least own the damn building.
Well, the county owns the.
I know who owns it.
Yeah.
I restored the building. I worked there. It's got new roof on it,
Probably
everything.
like to own it, but you would.
So,
Brian?
I think somebody got to check it.
The non-owner occupied program you were just talking about there, how much is their fee?
Non-owner
It's the
occupied?
same as.
That's
it's
the
same
program.
as- You call it a rental registry, but the reality is it's a non-owner occupied
Oh, okay.
property registration.
So the other one, there's another one then that's
The,
called,
the vacant,
yeah,
the
The
foreclosed.
vacant, foreclosed, and abandoned registry?
Right.
right.
They
That mostly
pay-
banks are complying with.
Yeah,
But
that's $350, registration of $50 a month.
75 a month.
Oh,
What we do is we
75
make
a
sure,
month.
we make sure that we have
Yeah.
inspectors that drive by these houses, make sure they're not getting broken into. Because again, the city was doing open accessible, boarding up, spending sometimes as high as $1,000 a board up a house, and then eventually having to tear it down, and the taxpayers of the city were getting stuck for that. So we're trying to make sure, and then right now, we happen to have a lot of banks. We have 50 properties right now that have paid in this registry, and they're all banks. And when they find out we have it, they comply. But they're
that's
used to
not-
these kind of things in a lot of communities.
Is that program being enforced?
We actually, right now, we're so overwhelmed through the employees we got doing the non-owner occupied, but we do have, people are getting word of mouth and they're starting to register. We had 2 actually register today. So we are starting to enforce it. There will be new letters going out in the non-owner occupied stuff to try to get the other 20% that we know aren't registered voluntarily before we have to go to the Administrative Hearings Bureau. And then there's another letter going out on the FBA. Even the letters we're sending out. I think one of the gentlemen said something, they got a letter about you're going to be thrown in jail if you don't do this. We've decriminalized a lot of those things now, so you're not going to get a letter saying you got 90 days to get in jail. It's not a misdemeanor. We're not trying to do that. All of our, even our violation letters are being rewritten so it's softer. It's not meant to intimidate. We're not going to throw you in prison, drag you down the street. The idea is we're trying to get compliance and improve the neighborhoods. We're not trying to punish people. We're trying to gain compliance, and that's what we're trying to do. So.
How do you find out about all the rentals around in? I mean.
Actually, we've got about-
a ton of them.
We got about 400 of them we never knew were rentals.
Yeah.
And when people saw the paper, they did the right thing and came forward, most of them. But then you have a lot of other people that once one landlord complies, it's amazing how they report the other. The other. That happens pretty readily.
Can you see a list of properties that have been inspected or no?
You can.
Yeah?
It's all foiable, and quite frankly, and that's another thing. We don't make, and somebody comes in and asks for something that's easily done, we don't make you go, we shouldn't be making you fill out constant FOIA requests as if there's an antagonistic thing we're trying to hide, you know. If you ask for something, you come in and you want to see houses that we've inspected, we'll give them to you. And-
Yeah.
But the landlords are getting hit hard, agree, Brian?
Yeah.
And one of their complaints or concerns is that our residences aren't being
Kept
in-
up.
I know, I'm
kept
a
up.
landlord, we live 2 doors from our apartment house. And,
Oh, yeah.
but we've had people there for 11 years.
We have sighted
Why would you
people.
wanna- Why would it matter? If the house looks like crap, just report it. Why do you need to know if it's a rental or not? It
I'll
just
tell you
really-
why, there's a guy that lives down the street, and he's a judge, and I'd like to see if his property has been inspected.
So
There's
just
always
call and
problems there.
Report the address.
Always problems.
Yeah, and unfortunately, people have the right to know. They can come in and ask
But
on your
back to your
house.
question.
They can get your report.
You can report if a house, like, just in real estate, if there's a house that looks like the porch is stuffed full of stuff and you can't move through it, I call the,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I don't
saying.
care
If it
what
looks like
municipality,
crap,
and
call.
I'll pick up the
Who cares
phone
who
and
owns
call.
it or if it's a rental, if
So.
it looks like crap, just call. I mean, really, I mean, they should be taking care of it.
We get a lot of those.
Yeah.
But we do have people who want to know, because some people will go directly and confront that person. And if they want to do that, that's fine. You want to say, I don't like the way your house looks and it's devaluing my property. You know, and quite frankly, we wouldn't have a need for our, if more people did that, you wouldn't have the need for us
Yeah.
to go around having
Right.
inspectors.
Just have one last one. If you said you're inspecting owner-occupied properties, at least from the exterior, how much is their fee?
Owner occupied?
Yeah.
There's not a registry for owner occupied. There's
not a
only a
registry.
non-owner occupied registry.
Not a
For
registry.
inspecting the properties, he wants to know if you're charging the owner.
My point is that the landlords are the only ones that are paying. Owner-occupieds are not paying, commercial properties are not paying. The other unoccupied houses are only on a voluntary
Yeah,
basis.
they're gonna, it's not
But
voluntary.
when I just redid my bathroom a couple of years ago, the city came in and inspected and charged a fee for me to have to,
That's just a permit fee.
yeah.
It's not a
Yes, right.
special fee.
So I own my property and I live there. Is that what you're,
Well, if they come and have to come and inspect your property, for example, on the outside because you won't paint it,
uh-huh.
for me, they got a fine. For you, they don't.
Well,
Actually, if we went up to a single-family home and they had lead peeling all over their house, so you gotta paint your house, and they refused to comply, they'd be in the HB just like you would be.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
they will be a
that's
fine.
court thing, that's not a, that's.
But
not
most
a-
people comply. It's, Brian,
Oh, and so
you
do
know,
I.
you
My-
know
my
that. You
point,
do,
You know.
but
it-
80%
it's
don't.
the typical thing where 70% of people that comply are paying for the ones that don't. And it's the same thing with the garbage.
that's the
enforcement.
church.
It's the
10%
same.
of people do the work. I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's how it goes, but, you know, as a businessman, if you don't watch out for the short run, you don't have to worry about the long run, because there won't be
Absolutely.
one. So, every day I wake up, I got a new fee to pay as a businessman in this town. If it's not the rain tax, now it's the garbage tax, now it's the rental inspection, now it's the, you know.
but I mean, we can't get people to move into the city of Jackson. You know, how are you gonna do that? How do you get people?
By improving the property,
Yeah.
the desirability.
And
And I
lowering
agree with that.
53%
I
of
just
the
am tired of
rentals.
being the only guy that pays for it, because the commercial guys don't have it paid for it. The owner occupieds don't pay for it.
You know, Brian, we got 280 vacant, abandoned commercial industrial structures in this city alone. We are gonna be addressing them. It's just right now, nobody wants us to hire a ton of inspectors and raise fees, so we're trying to, so many inspectors can do, basically doing 232, basically taking vacation and everything else out. You got 232 days a year you can do inspections. One person can only do so
Talking
many
about
inspections.
commercial structures that are vacant?
Yeah, we're gonna be doing inspections, and we have. Actually, we've torn down 8 commercial structures that have been inspected and were charged.
Well, why can't,
There's not a registry for them
why
yet.
can't you man up on the commercial ones, just like you manned up on the rental ones?
Well, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, we haven't done it yet. And there's a need, there is clearly a need, Brian.
How long did it take to get through our inspection process before, and how now quickly are we trying to condense that into?
Well, we always had a 2-year cycle,
Right,
but some people never got inspected because you had one person doing over 7,000 units.
right.
You know that can't happen. It can't happen in 10 years. So we know that an inspector can do about 1,600 inspections per year. All right, that's a follow-up too. Remember, there's a follow-up inspection included in that 175. And when somebody doesn't have a follow-up inspection, they have no violations, they're getting the $50 credited back, so there's no follow-up inspection. But what we're trying to do now is say, listen, enough is enough. What we've been doing the last 30 years has not worked. Because one of the part in the presentation that I've been giving for a year now, and we've got to update, start doing that again, is that if you look at the projection of our population, so many people are saying our population is dropping. And guess what? Our population isn't moving to the county, it's moving the heck out of the county. When it leaves the city, it's leaving. And that's what the statistics show. So what we're trying to do is say, listen, it hasn't worked in 30 years, we can't take 30 years to correct it because it's so far gone, and you're going to start bleeding 10,000 people every decade, every census comes here. What happens when you got infrastructure that's set up to take 60,000 people like it had in the 40s, and now you've got 10,000 people supporting it? People like you are supporting that much infrastructure. That's what we're looking at. This is, I know it looks like it's willy-nilly, but the plan is here, when you take a house down, when you enforce a rental, when you do all these things, it's always to the end of the council goals that they had. When a department head makes a recommendation, they have to figure out a way to tie it to council's goals. If they can't do it, it's not going to be spent. That's just it.
I'm gonna try to move you along, because I know it's getting late, and I was following this stuff on TV in regards to the city commission. Stormwater fees, I know, there was a lot of discussion on that, so could you
Let me
explain
go
that?
over Blackboard real quick. This is gonna be a way, and then we'll get into that. This is gonna be a way that, we can notify landlords, we can remind you to renew your pet license, you know? Simple, simple things like that, so,
You know where to look.
I think they're gonna do a blast email based on some data that they have on people already, that the vendor can
We've already
obtain.
populated the system with 13,000 numbers that were already published. So some of you may be already on that, and you'll be getting a test message to say, here's you go. If you want to opt out, you can do
And
that.
you can opt out if you want it or not, so, it's free.
No, it isn't free. You're paying for it through your taxes because the city is not charging a fee.
Right. And if you live outside the city, you can get it also, right?
That's correct.
So.
Oh, we're subsidizing people that live outside.
What did you say?
I didn't want to do that, but Laura said we had to.
Okay, look at that, stormwater fee. I don't even have anything under it, because I didn't know what you'd want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about.
would just, because I watched it on TV, the city commission, and I know one day I was watching, there was a lot of discussion regards to this, there was a lot of people that were kind of upset about it, and I wanted to know what was that all about anyway?
I'll start it and I'll let John finish it. Because I wasn't here when it was done.
Neither was I, actually.
But I'll give you an idea. You know, when we talked about leaf pickup.
Right.
I'm in town, and we were spending general fund dollars to do that. Or I'm sorry, Act 51 money. When you're taking money and instead of redoing streets and you're sweeping up and picking up leaves with it, that's not a good thing. Those leaves eventually decompose. They end up in the catch basin, which end up in the river. That's why we use a lot of that money, the stormwater fee, to clean these streets, to get these things cleaned up. And it's based on a fee based on the number of area you have and the runoff of the property you have. And we've now amended it. We're trying to make it easier to maneuver for businesses. We're also actually trying to, we actually reduce the residential rate. There are other things that we're going to be instituting to make it so that people can credit themselves out of the system. Now, I mean, we have a property right now, Dr. O'Neill's office, that was built on Elm. They did the right thing, and they aren't going to pay a fee because they actually built to restrict their runoff, such that you see they got permeable concrete on their site. They did a lot of the nice green things that even Mike's place over here did. Gentleman owns the lighting place.
Oh, Full Spectrum.
Full Spectrum did it
Thank
4
you.
years before we even had it on our radar. They did the right thing. So those kind of things are happening. So we're,
And McDonald's added landscape.
yeah, and they did it, and we asked him to do it, and he did it. Steve did the work. But that's why you see some of the design standards you see, and people are complaining in business where they have to put curbs or bump outs of trees, street trees. That's done partly to accommodate stormwater runoff. But John can give you some really specifics about why we do stormwater runoff. There's a lot of these utilities around. We just happen to be being sued over it. But
Plus, I'm trying to get you a discount too on rain barrels, so that maybe you can
John,
get
maybe you
some
go
of
ahead
these
and
discounts.
come up here and
Well, part of it goes back to, just how stormwater has been treated over the years. And I put together a presentation that I took to council. 1948 is when the first federal stormwater bill was passed. And I said, that worked so well for us that across the United States, the Cuyahoga River caught fire.
Right.
In 68, 69, I forgot now which year it was exactly. Actually, there's a book that's coming out this year. I've got some information about it. It's coming out, but there's 4 rivers in the Great Lakes area that caught on fire. And so I want to get this book to read about it. The Rouge River in Detroit was one of those. But the Cuyahoga was one of the first ones, and so they got all the publicity and everything on it. So then the 72 Clean Water Act came out, following up after the problems that were happening. And then they still had some problems, so in '84, they came out with the water, I'm gonna draw a blank on what the name of it was. The Water Quality Act. And so then you're looking at it, and with not only just having the clean water and looking at how the water is coming to us, we want to try and restrict the flow, but then also they're looking at just how much sediment, how much debris is in that water that's coming at us also. And we have requirements, and we had to get a permit in 2003 was our first stormwater permit that we had to get with the state of Michigan. When the city got that, we had requirements, we had to do the street sweeping, which the city had been doing, but then that increased what we had to do, keeping sediments, keeping leaves, keeping grass and everything else, because as that decomposes, once it gets to the river, there's oxygen demand that leaves and vegetation has as it's decomposing, and that steals oxygen away from the fish, the other aquatic life that's in the river system.
Let me jump in here real quick, John. I know people have complained a lot about the stormwater system, and it's a wave of the future that's happening. Even the federal government has come out and mandated all federal facilities to pay stormwater fees wherever they are in the nation. That's an edict that the federal government put out because they believe in it so much, and that's what has to happen by law. But remember, and some of you have parents that would probably tell you this, that you know that
the street sweeping and everything else. That way, we get complaints because of this on the west side of town. All the streets are falling apart because we don't have the money to rebuild streets. And so, well, 700, 800,000 a year is going into what was river maintenance, basically. But it was street sweeping, leaf pickup, and catch basin cleaning. A lot of that activities because that activity is in the streets.
About maintenance on the cab.
Well, the river cap removal and that, well, then.
I'm glad it's gone.
Yes.
About the maintenance.
But the reason that cap was built is what Pat was just talking about, is because the sewage was going to the river. So in the 30s, instead of cleaning it up, you build the cap over the river to hide it. And so that's the reason that the river cap was built in the city of Jackson. So with that, then that's, and there's thousands of these stormwater utilities across the United States. So we sit there and some people are complaining, well, the city of Jackson's now created one. We are dealing with Alro. And so I asked them, I said, well, you've got plans in quite a few locations. And I know one of the guys works at Alro and a lot of the locations where they have a number of facilities down in Florida. Florida's the biggest state with stormwater utilities. Alro's also got one in St. Louis, Michigan. Well, St. Louis, Missouri. And St. Louis, Missouri has a stormwater utility. So I'm going, this isn't new to you guys, is it? They're kind of like, no. They've had to deal with it with their property maintenance through a lot of their properties. It's just that Jackson has now started one. And so in our first go-around with this, we tried to figure out what was going to be the rate. We worked with a consultant. And so it was set at $8 a quarter for residential properties. After the first year of it, we went and analyzed it, and so it's been reduced to $7.50 a quarter that we're charging residential properties. And then commercial properties are based on the equivalent to what they would be to a residential property. And so that's how it's put together with some of it. And then there's credits that you can get. And that's what, if you have rain barrels, if you have the vegetative strips, if your property is such that you've got a lot of your roof area and your driveway and that going over to a vegetated area, if you're on just like my house is on a 50-foot wide by 132-foot, I don't have enough grass area. That's right there.
But who assesses that? Who can you call to come out and say, look at my property and
You would contact the engineer.
I didn't see anything yet. And he wasn't looking at you. He wasn't looking to help.
all right, I'm
And you can get up to 100% credit is,
And
I don't know what those are though.
Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but we are looking at, trying to figure out a way for residential property owners to credit themselves out of it, but it would take money to be spent to do the right thing.
I have one last thing I want to say. I don't know who in the city come up with the idea of being able to go online and call or register with the police department out of town for them to do walk-arounds on your property, but I love it.
Oh, good, we'll pass that on.
What kind of word do they think? People obviously are overwhelmed at having everything being thrown at them. I think you just need a better job of communicating things like this. Because I think that's the biggest complaint. It's like, what now? What are these people doing this now? I think if you do a better job of communicating it.
And groups like this are more manageable. I'm willing to do that to any group and go and speak, and I've done this to many groups. And when people hear that there's actually a logical directive of what we're trying to accomplish, they think, oh, and they say, well, you could have done a better job of communicating that.
Right.
Same thing you said.
Right. I mean, you start out, you say government, you start out, you go out there and screw us with this,
Well, we're not here to say we're at.
No, that's the common thought. That's the common thought, yeah.
And the last topic I have, which shouldn't take hardly any time, I hope, is
I can sit down on this.
medical marijuana. They've ruled against dispensaries right now, although I think you'll probably at some point see them come back, so I think the city will probably address zoning issues on that so that they're in the right spots. But we still have to do an ordinance on where people can grow it and caregivers. So we have a work group working on that. Our goal is probably so that caregivers can't grow it in a residential neighborhood.
Did I hear correctly that all of the dispensaries in Jackson County were shut down?
They were sent letters, and they were supposed to be closed by a certain time frame. And I know I got a copy of the letter, but to be honest with you, I haven't had a chance.
So it wasn't just the city of Jackson, it was all of Jackson County.
County, yeah, that was the Jackson County prosecutor.
Did you get a letter because you have a dispensary?
No, I got Oh, way to go. You're quick on that one.
So the city wasn't making any money, so they had to shut this down, until they figure out a way to reach some of the
This
problems.
is state Supreme Court.
Yeah, I know, I read that, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
just all
not the
money
city.
deal, the state can't make any money on it, not a big,
Well, the state made $10 million on it for
Yeah,
licensing.
for somehow,
Or
that's not enough.
in the cards. They were projecting $3 million, I think, and they made $10 million. So I think they got a little bit of extra there.
Well, they just legalize it, and take the penalties off it. Hey, wrong my words, man.
At this point, if you have a certain issue, especially with the dispensaries, there is a provisioning centers bill on the books right now to be voted on. My suggestion would be contact Earl Gluska, because he's your state representative. They still listen to you.
Yeah, and this here now, this.
Well, I contacted a Republican representative, and he was actually in agreement with my opinion of the provisioning centers, which I think they're a good thing in my personal opinion.
So if you're making money, why would you want to,
But as far as the city's concerned, right now we're looking at zoning, where they should be, when and if they come back into existence, and where and how we're dealing with the current caregiver situation. Yeah, they're getting on their business. We need to figure out where they'll fit in on zoning. Future meetings, right now I've got June 4th planned.